Hello and welcome. My name is Allie, and today I'm going to be talking about the 6 assumptions of the andragogical model and how I will incorporate those assumptions into my design of my final project for this class. Welcome. The first assumption is that adults have this need to know information. Adults not only need to know the information, but they also need to know why they need to know it. So in order to kind of bring this into my final design, I am going to have a welcome statement for my class, and this is going to be a brief overview of what they're going to be learning, and then I'm also going to state the learning objective. The goal of stating this learning objective is so that adults will know why they are learning what they are learning in my project and in my presentation, and how this is going to help them later on. The goal of bringing this learning objective is to kind of squash this assumption of they need to know. So they are going to know why they need to know this information, and then they will also know how they will incorporate it and use it later. The second assumption in the Andragogy model is the assumption that adults and the learners are ultimately up to themselves and responsible for their own learning. So it's not up to me to say, hey, you have to learn this information, but they actually have to believe it and understand that they are responsible for learning the information. So when I design my final project, I hope to bring in a lot of different things to kind of help with this. I want to get the buy-in right away from these learners, and I'm going to start with a problem statement. The reason I'm going to start with a problem statement is that a lot of teachers, at least that I have seen in education, think there are problems, and the problem statement that I'm going to introduce is going to be about education and about these models that we tend to use all the time that aren't backed by research. So I'm going to get them automatically thinking that there is a problem in education and that my project and my design, my ideas that I'm going to give them will help them with this problem. I also will hint in the beginning that I'll be using 2 new models in design that will help with learners learning. And I know that sounds a little confusing, but I'll tell you guys now. I'm going to be using the Beyond bullet point design in my slides, and I'll be using the practical inquiry model throughout my presentation for my final. These are going to be 2 models that most teachers have not heard of. My reasoning is by telling them that I'm going to be using 2, they'll be more inept to look for them while I am speaking and while the presentation is going on, and this will help create that buy-in for they're going to be responsible for coming up with this own learning for themselves. The third assumption in the Andragogy model is that learners have experiences, and this was a huge difference from kids' experiences and adults' experiences. Since my final project is going to be a professional development video for adults, I really want to make sure that I bring in those life experiences for the adults. So in order to kind of design my final project around this assumption, I will have different scenario opportunities for adults to kind of think, collaborate with whoever they are with, discuss these real life scenarios. This will bring in some more examples that they've already had with technology and learning, some problem students that may have benefited from technology, just different ways that they think that they might be using technology. At the very end of my presentation, I'm also going to list examples out, and my reason for this is not only that I will have my examples, but they will have theirs that maybe fits in the model of my design, that they could also email, share out to each other, think about a little bit more. But this connects my experiences with their experiences, and this therefore helps that assumption that everyone has something to bring to the table. Assumption number 4 is that adults have to be ready to learn the information. So not only that one has to be there, but they also need to be ready to learn the information and be able to apply it to those real life situations. It's one thing just to know the information and be able to regurgitate information and spit it back out, but you want the adult, your learner, to be able to express those ideas in a real life environment. So in order to design my project around this assumption, I am kind of taking the whole topic idea of technology. Technology, as we know, is kind of newer, but it is here to stay. There is nothing going to get rid of technology. For example, my school this year was one-to-one devices, meaning each kid had their own device. Now, that's probably going to be the standard practice in most schools, and therefore my development video is going to be on how to bring in this technology and how to merge it with what we're already doing in the classroom to equal something better together. And by doing this, I'm going to kind of squash this assumption and bring in that adults really can and really do need to know what their technology is. And even though you've been teaching it one way forever and ever and ever, things are changing, and my entire presentation is going to be based on this idea of technology is here, it is to stay, and that we need to change our teaching practice to bring in these things with technology in order to better fit our students and honestly better fit ourselves. We're going to be missing out if we don't learn this information and don't have these things at the tips of our fingertips to be able to bring into our lessons at a moment's notice. The fifth assumption is the orientation to learning. Adults, such as myself, want to know how this information will help me in my real life. Not just some dream world of saying, oh, you might get technology in the future, but right now, what can you do that you may already be doing in the classroom to incorporate this technology in your real life? So part of my design for my final project is going to be taking things that we do daily, taking things that we do all the time, and I will incorporate different scenarios. So maybe you have a problem child at school and you want to help them in some way, shape, or form. I will give a little demonstration, a little in-breath scenario for them. They will be able to think about it, reflect upon it, maybe relate to their own life experience on it, and be able to incorporate my idea of bringing technology in order to help this scenario. Now, I understand that scenarios are not real life, so I will also bring in exact examples of how they may be using some of the ideas that I have for my final project in real life. So I'm going to have a slide that they can kind of talk about, write down, reflect upon examples in which they're doing things such as using reflective practices for the students, how they may be giving feedback out to the students, and maybe I'll have them list out the types of technology that will help them with these things that they are already doing in their real life. So it's really making that connection known in order to help this assumption. The sixth and final assumption for this model is motivation. Motivation is always going to be a factor for most people. Adults tend to be both internally motivated and externally motivated. Externally motivated is by an outside factor. So I might just throw in my final design that their students are going to be better inept to learning if they know this information. I may throw in that, their principal may be happier that they are learning this information. Those are all external factors. Their students wanting to know it. Great, I can learn this information for the students, but how is that going to help me, right? So then I'm also going to throw out a few statements that will keep them internally motivated. Things such as your test data is going to go up if you learn this information. Things like you could become the expert in technology at your school. Those are all internal factors. At least for me, those are internal factors. I want to be known as the expert at my school. I want my test scores to go up. I want to look like the best teacher I can possibly be. And if you tell me that I need this information in order to be those things, you better believe I'm going to be paying attention. So I'm going to kind of just throw out those statements. I may even have them reflect upon it, maybe think about how this will help them. What are they motivated to learn for? Why are they still in teaching? I think that it really comes down to that big final question of why are you still in teaching? Teaching, as we all know, you have to continue on and get all of these certifications all the time, different degrees, going for different classes all the time. It's a continual education of professional development. This is just one other stepping stone that's also going to help your students, your school, and yourself, which are all motivation factors. Therefore, this assumption will be taken care of in regards to my entire presentation. Therefore, those are the 6 assumptions of andragogy, and I hope that you learned something. I hope to really take these assumptions into practice when I'm designing my final project for this class and really be able to tailor my design ideas around what these assumptions are and what the students or my learners are going to know and bring with them, making my presentation something that will benefit them for themselves, but also for myself and for their students as well. So thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something.